Hi, I'm Elena Romero, and welcome to the Hip Hop Subway on the L Line. This special 6-part series celebrates the 50th anniversary of hip hop, presented by LATiNAS and CUNY TV. We'll be examining the global phenomenon that is hip hop from every angle, specifically through the Latino lens. Some have questioned Latinos' place in hip hop, while others have argued that Latinos have been consistently left out of this conversation. While looking at the elements of hip hop, Latinos have been in every position: MCs, b-boy, b-girls, graffiti artists, and DJs. And although not always receiving mainstream recognition. In this special series, we'll talk to the innovators who laid the groundwork, the brown artists who made it happen, and discuss what's next for us when it comes to money, power, and respect, just like Little Kim would say. Our first guest on the L Line is CCNY Professor Warren Orange, who's been teaching the popular history, culture, and politics of hip hop course for over 10 years. Welcome.
Hello.
So Warren, we're celebrating the 50th year of hip hop. Where does this story begin?
Origin stories are always contentious, so as an intellectual, you know that you can actually begin it almost anywhere you would like. Not anywhere. Some people can go all the way back to Africa, and I would be one of the people that would make it something that happened after the civil rights movement. And you saw particular kinds of frustrations being expressed in the artistic forms that were coming along in the 1970s, New York, especially the Bronx.
So how does hip hop evolve?
That's a trick question. It's like, it evolves because it was so captivating to so many groups of people. Built into the beginning of hip hop, you have such things as the battle. Each of the elements had some form of a battle concept that was associated with it. And in my estimation, that is the source of at least the artistic evolution of hip hop, because it's built into the DNA of each of the artistic forms.
What exactly are the elements of hip hop?
Well, the original elements: graffiti, you have b-boying, b-girls, you have rapping, and you have MCs.
So where do you see hip hop now? We've had 50 years. And more importantly, where do Latinos fit into this story?
I would actually reframe that question, because I would probably ask how Latinos fit in. Because from the very beginning, Latinos were there. Those communities where hip hop begins are constituted with African Americans, Caribbeans, Black Caribbeans of varying sorts, and Latinos, specifically Puerto Ricans. And they always were there. When you're looking at the early gang structures, Latinos were there. When you're looking at b-boying especially, you see Latinos dominating, especially in the early part of the evolution of that art form. And graffiti artists, Latinos, and white working class young people, as well as Black people, participated in that element of hip hop. So I think it's more of a question is, how Latinos fit in. And that may be a bit of a contentious issue, depending on who you ask.
Let's give some of those Latinos their flowers. Who are some of the early Latinos that are in each of these elements that you recall made a significant impact on the culture?
I'm from the Bronx, so Cold Crush means a lot to us. And Charlie Chase was a DJ for Cold Crush. I remember Charlie Chase. There was Prince Whippoorwhip, but we didn't necessarily see him exclusively through the lens of a Latino.
Why not?
He was because of his skin tone. There's a comedian that says, "I'm black like this." And his skin tone, we saw Prince Whippoorwhip as just another Black person. And we sort of saw most of the Latinos that were around us as just another variation of Black people.
But it didn't really seem like the Latino aspect became commercialized. Any idea as to why or why not?
Maybe it had to do as much with which element, because unbeknownst to a lot of people in this generation, hip hop is not just rap, right? But rap has become the primary spokespeople for all of hip hop. They are representative of everything hip hop, when, of course, just as we just mentioned, there are numerous elements, right? And KRS had a recent song referencing he has 9 elements at this point. And we know Bambaataa very early in the evolution of hip hop added knowledge as an element. Latinos were not participating as robustly in that element that became the most popular aspect of hip hop, which is rap music.
So where are we now? And where could it be going?
You know, Mos Def once said, people ask, what's going to happen to hip hop down the line? He says, well, you just ask the question is what's going to happen to us down the line, and that will determine what will happen to hip hop. So some of it is undetermined.
Thank you, Warren. I really love what you talked about today, and it's really important to set that record straight. We'll talk to you a little bit later in the show. We'll be right back. Now, Warren just mentioned the place Latinos have in hip hop. And to take that conversation forward, we have Kim Osorio, the former editor-in-chief of one of the powerhouse hip hop magazines, The Source, and award-winning photographer, filmmaker, creative director for Wu Tang Productions, and the founder of the official Latino Film Festival. And by the way, my NYU hermano, Danny Hastings. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, thank you.
Hi. Good to see you. So we just asked Warren about Latinos and hip hop. How do you both see Latinos fitting into the hip hop narrative? We'll start with you, Kim.
Great. Hello, Danny.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
I think it's, a lot of people talk about this, right? Fitting Latinos into hip hop culture. But for me, there's never been a separation, right? So Latinos have always been a part of hip hop culture. I've always felt the unity that we have within hip hop culture. So, it's just a natural thing. I don't think it's a conversation about where do we fit in. We just do.
So why has it been always something sort of in question every once in a while, especially through social media?
I mean, social media questions everything, right? Social media is picking apart everything. I think this newer and later generation, there are a lot of cultural conversations that are being had, and there's a positive to that as well. But I think us within hip hop, especially the OGs, right? It's our responsibility to make sure that conversation stays in the right place. And, I don't overanalyze what goes on social media. Well, I do overanalyze it. Let me not say that. But I don't lend too much credence to it, right? Because we are a part of the culture. We always have been a part of the culture. The internet is going to do what the internet does. The internet likes the internet. The internet is interneting. That's what it's doing. So social media is social mediaing. That's what it's doing. So what we need to do is make sure we stay in the conversation and continue and pay attention and just weigh in, right? Because I think when we do have that conversation, it's one that the younger community can understand and they'll listen to. If they're having that conversation, then we aren't doing our job right.
Talk about it. Danny, what's your take?
I agree with Kim 100%, especially in her closing statement. I feel like we need to also, teach and educate, the new generation, right, from the Latino perspective, because I always felt a part of it. Like I always felt like we haven't been denied or anything, or we haven't been, like we were there from the beginning.
The origin of hip hop was started by the power of Black and Puerto Rican people.
I think the new generation sees it a different way. And there's I don't know. I sometimes feel like maybe there's some anti-Blackness going around where Latinos from the new generation may feel like, oh, we're not included and we were there from the beginning, so how come you're not including us? And we're like, we were included, right? There's, Rocksteady Crew, there's Charlie Chase, there's all these Latino pioneers that were part of the movement, but they didn't go in there waving the Latino flag. You know what I'm saying? We were all one, you know what I mean? So right now it's like, if they're included in the history, do we really have to actually emphasize that like Latinos were part of the creation? We didn't go in as Latinos. We went in as lovers of the culture, you know what I mean? Part of the culture. We grew up from that, right? And I came a little later to New York City in '86, so I was seeing a lot of things from the outside perspective. I came from Panama.
And there's diversity in our Latinidad. Boricua Morena, Panamanian and Chicano.
100%. Like, we're Black, we're indigenous, we're everything. So, of course we're included. You know what I mean? Of course we're not erased. Nobody can take that away from us. What we did in history is already documented. But this new generation, it's almost like somebody makes an argument and they're looking for bites, right? They're looking for things that they can do more hits with them. And they say all of a sudden, somebody says, Latinos were not part of the hip hop movement. And all of a sudden, they get 1 million hits. Now there's 1 million people talking about that. And now there's Latinos coming to defend something that we didn't even needed to defend. That was an ignorant statement to say. So now the conversation gets bigger, and all of a sudden, the focus is Latinos are being erased from hip hop. It's like, no, we're not. We're part of it. We obviously did our contribution, and look at so many talented, not only artists, but also behind the scenes, right? That were, I feel like we're also documentaries. There's a lot of us that went in and documented like the stories, and that's also part of it. Graffiti, almost every other name is Latino in graffiti. Breakdancing as well, Rocksteady Crew, all of them. So, I feel like the conversation gets a little like, muddy, and confused, but, we were definitely part of it.
I agree. Kim, what gets left out?
Tough question, right? And I want to definitely agree with what Danny said about the conversation, just to add on to that, right? One person starts a conversation, the media amplifies it, and then all of a sudden it becomes an issue. I think it's important for us to make sure, well, one, we know the media is different now, and the responsibility that the media has, they don't always exercise that. So I feel like we need to be a bigger part of the conversation, even with the media, right? And in terms of educating the media, because a lot of people in the space, with the way that media is changing, the bloggers, the sites, the gossip sites, right? They amplify these arguments that really have no background and no foundation. So what we need to do is make sure that we are taking hold of that narrative and making sure the media is doing their part in qualifying the correct arguments.
Well, while we talked about what was left out, I want to know, where are Latinos in hip hop today?
I mean, you see Latinos in hip hop all over, right? Like, we're sitting here now, we're having the conversation, right? In terms of the artist representation, there's so much Latino representation amongst the artists that are out there. But remember, hip hop, it's not just what it was back in the day when it was founded. It has now grown into a business. It has grown into subgenres, right? So, I think there's even a Latino subgenre that is out there musically, right? But it's no different than all of these other subgenres of hip hop that are out there. So hip hop has grown tremendously over the last 50 years. So there's so much to cover. There's Latino representation everywhere.
Final word.
Yeah, I agree with her. There's a lot of, there's a lot of new Latino artists right now. And then we also got to differentiate, right? Like we have Latinos from the US and then we have Latinos in Latin America, right? Big difference, right? Like, the Latinos in the US tend to be, a little more part of like that hip hop movement, right? From the origins to now. And in Latin America, obviously with the explosion of reggaeton, that kind of seems to be like the bigger urban movement down there. However, there is a growing hip hop in Spanish, like boom bap in Spanish, like there's a resurgence. So I think in the next few years, we're gonna see a lot of more of them popping because they're actually, I'm happy to say that they're staying true to the essence. Like they're staying true to the essence in terms of sound, in terms of rhymes. They might not be like your top 5 Billboard, mainstream hip hop that is going on right now, right? But, I'm happy to hear like a lot of the artists that are coming, they're really trying to keep that culture, essence going. And there's a lot of them out there.
And we're finding éxito in English and Spanish. We've got Cardi B and we've got Bad Bunny. Well, thank you, Danny and Kim, for your insight you've just provided. Latinos have definitely had a place in this conversation. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Professor Warren Orange is here again to discuss CUNY's Hip Hop Connection. So, a lot of people may not realize that hip hop and CUNY have sort of a relationship for a long-standing period of time. What could you tell us about that? Let's start with the movie Beat Street.
Well, I sort of think that the movie Beat Street was more of a backdrop for some parts of that movie. I don't know if that was as significant. I think what we attempted to do was far more significant in establishing a long-term relationship between hip hop and CUNY. But we also have the fact that Russell Simmons was a college student at City College. We have Curtis Blow, who is probably, I think, only the second artist to record a hip hop song, has a relationship with City College. He took classes there and recently was taking classes again at City College. So.
Wasn't he in your class?
Yes, he was in a class with me.
So how was it having him in your classroom?
It was completely an honor. It took a while for me to get myself together because I spent a lot of time being a fan of the music, and then you have to take him seriously at a whole nother level. And it took a minute for me to do that, so it was...
Did he self-identify himself as an artist, or did he go by his government name?
He uses both.
Okay.
He's authentic. He's an authentic person. He is very humble, and he's very intelligent.
So for our viewers, let's get into some fun facts. So CCNY was kind of in the storyline of Beat Street, if I recall, correct?
Yes. Part of one of the breakdancing scenes is in Aaron Davis Hall, an important building on the campus. And one of the characters is a student, I think, in performing arts at City College.
Which makes sense, its connection with Aaron Davis Hall.
Yes.
And wasn't there also a concert scene that was shot at Aaron Davis Hall as well?
I think the very last scene of the movie where Melly Mel comes out and sings the song Beat Street is in Aaron Davis Hall as well. And
outside of CCNY, have there been other rap personas who have attended CUNY that you know of?
Andre Harrell from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Previously, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde became the president of Uptown Records, was a student at Lehman, if I'm not mistaken.
And from what I remember, I think even Cardi B attended a CUNY college, and J-Lo, they didn't necessarily graduate.
Got to get that shmoney.
Thanks again, Warren. CUNY and hip hop, who knew? Well, I did because I'm a CUNY student too. And we'll be right back with 2 CUNY hip hop alums. The media has played a vital role in promoting and the globalization of hip hop. And before MTV, we had Video Music Box, the longest running music show in the world. Today we have the founder and original host, VJ Ralph McDaniels, and one of his co-hosts, Tuffy Questell. They both also happen to be CUNY alums. Welcome, Ralph and Tuffy.
How did you know I was a CUNY alum? I guess it's the internet, right?
Google. It wasn't AI.
They got your record. You didn't do good sophomore year.
So speaking of which, how did CUNY play a role in your careers?
LaGuardia had an internship program. That was one of the reasons why I went there. So they would get you an internship at different, according to what field you want to be in. They had internships in TV and in film. And the first internship I did was at Fox 5. And then I did Manhattan Cable, it was the first cable company. And then it was NYC, WNYC TV, Channel 31, which I ended up getting a job there and creating Video Music Box there.
What about you, Tuff?
For me, it was City College and Bronx Community College. I went to Bronx because my dad graduated from Bronx Community College. So it just made sense, although I wasn't going into the nursing program like he did. Professor Valerie Capers, who was an amazing professor and blind musician, she and I sat and talked forever, and she just really inspired me. But I really wanted to be in television more so than in communications and in the media. I love journalism, but I was a little leery about that because I thought that my creative juices needed to be in front of the screen, not behind it.
So now what made you both get into media at CUNY?
Tuffy just mentioned communications and journalism. You know, there were so many of us that were coming up in that space. And we didn't have any, we couldn't get hired at the networks back then. You know, they were ABC, NBC, CBS. There was very small amount of Black and people of color in those spaces. And we had to go to some of the smaller low power stations so we could get creative and do things. And some of us then went to the networks. So that was usually the path in the late 70s and early 80s. You know, it's changed quite obviously now. You know, Black folks is in prime time on everything, on all these channels, and it's not just Black people watching it, not just Latinos watching it.
And owning channels too, right?
Owning channels too, exactly. So we've come a long way, and I'm glad to see the progress. But I feel like myself and others like Spike and other filmmakers at that particular time were groundbreaking in introducing our folks into how to move in this world. Yeah.
So important. It's so important to have key figures who take you under their tutelage. You know, Ralph is everyone's uncle, but he's also my uncle. He's also my mentor. Ralph put me on. You know, Video Music Box was a blessing to me, but to hear from him and to watch him move and to watch how he moved and how he brought young people of color, Black, Spanish, Indian, Asian, into the game. You know, they were interns, they were production assistants, and they got checks. They didn't just get credit. And that changed the game. The idea that you could work and get a check, ooh, please. Well, the check might have been small. You know, you could buy sneakers and some gum. But you know what? I got sneakers and I got gum. I'm okay with that right now. But that's what it was.
Ralph, what got you started? What made you launch Video Music Box?
The need to see something that I liked, that my generation, my age group liked on TV. Because prior to that, it was like a little older generation, and that happens. You know, I'm probably around too long for some people right now. There's a young kid going, man, get off the TV right now. But I wanted to see hip hop. I wanted to see music that I was into, if it was house music, reggae music, whatever it was. I wanted to see that on TV, and it wasn't, and I knew it existed somewhere. And so, you know, I started, you know, inviting my friends to come and be on TV. Come on up, and we play the music videos. And then hip hop has been very diverse. I think that's one of the things that Tuffy just said, was that it had no color. We all loved it. You know, if you were Black, if you were Latino, if you were Asian American, if you were wherever you from, white, wherever, I don't care where you came from, all you had to do was recite the words, and people were like, oh, you like that song too? And that was enough to, like, we hanging out now. You my best friend.
However, social media has been saying somewhat otherwise. Let's get this record straightened out, right? What role did Latinos play in hip hop?
You want to start?
I will start.
He's from the Bronx.
I mean, I used to always say 1, 2, 3. My family's BDP because I'm Black, Dominican, and Puerto Rican. So, for me, hip hop was important. I spent my own money, not my mother's money, not my father's money, on buying records. We were always there. The problem was we were all trying to get in the door. So it wasn't Blacks doing it or Latinos doing it. It was all of us. You know, it was the melting pot. We were all trying to figure out what was the remedy, what was the solution to getting in the door and getting our own opportunity.
Latinos been there from day one. Do not get it twisted. They got Breakbeat Lou. Breakbeat Lou been selling breakbeats for as long as I know.
Whew.
So how do he know which ones were the ones to sell?
Say that.
Man, we could be talking about this for hours, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. I want to thank you, Uncle Ralph, for being on the show. And Tuffy, of course, you as well. And we'll have to continue this conversation on our next episode. So Tuffy, since you're one of Ralph's co-hosts on Video Music Box, how about you join me as co-host on the next 5 episodes of our special? What do you say?
I would love that. Thank you. Ralph, hold this for me. I'll be right back.
That fast?
Come on, bro.
He's mine now. I'm Elena Romero.
And I'm Tuffy Questell, and we'll be riding with you next time on the Hip Hop
Subway on the L
L
line.
Holla.
Coming up on our next 5 episodes, we dig deeper into how Latinos in hip hop have been portrayed in the media. And we'll examine the elements and how we've always been a part of them. From fashion to photography, DJing, MCing, dancing, activism, and graffiti. It's gonna be lit, so make sure you come back and watch. Well,